Did ancient Near East pagans truly believe that their wood or stone statues of gods were in reality the gods themselves? It seems like the visible representation of an invisible reality abstraction is rather easy to make, but that might just be spoilers from the success of the work of Maximus the Confessor. You can see why I've chosen this mailbag question for this episode. It is weirdly opposite to everything that we have been talking about, right? That basically one of the things that I've been arguing via Barfield is that this distinction we have between visible and invisible reality. We believe in all things, right? Visible and invisible. It's true that we believe in all things visible and invisible. It's even true that there are visible things and invisible things. But it's not true that the starkness of that demarcation was always so apparent to everybody, Jewish or pagan, right? Regardless of whether you believed in the one true God or you believed in an idol, right? There was a sense in which these two kinds of reality, this physical presence, the encounter with the physical world, and then the spiritual realities or the abstract or the higher realities that encounter conveys and gets across, right? Those two things were tightly interlocked together. And so when you say, like, was worshiping Baal, was that like a kind of, were you worshiping human sacrifice? Was worshiping Mammon the same thing as worshiping wealth? How does this work exactly? A little bit of everything, right? This is like when Isaiah says, he has a passage where a guy goes out and chops down wood and creates a sculpture, and half of the wood he uses to warm himself, and then the other half he bows down to as if it were a god. And one of the things that Barfield points out is that frequently in the Bible, if you worship an idol, you become like the idol, which has eyes but does not see, has ears but does not hear. And this is the curse that God puts upon also those who disobey him, right? Why would that be? Well, it's not that the Jews didn't also have, they made no graven images, but they did have physical spaces where they worshipped and so on and so forth. It's that they were constantly being encouraged to understand these images as inviting them into a relationship with something which ultimately was only ever going to be mediated by the physical representation and never actually, embodied in the physical representation. And it's not necessarily that the pagans, had no concept that the god might exist above and beyond the statue that they had. It's that the things that statue was supposed to deliver, supposed to offer, were themselves lower than God, were more fleshly, had things like money, success, war, right? This is why now when we talk about idols, we talk about setting up earthly and material gain as the highest good, because the whole gesture of idolatry, which is still the reflexive gesture of the human heart, even if we no longer set up, the same kinds of stone statues, right? That whole gesture is to take a thing which conveys goodness to us and to identify it with goodness per se. So I do think that, some ancient religions were more complex than just to be like, this is where the god lives. I mean, not all were, some, but take Greek religion, for instance, there's plenty of very sophisticated Greek thought about, where does the god actually live? Do they occupy the place of the statues or just stand in for it? But the nature of idolatry is to confuse the vessel, confuse the word, confuse the flesh, confuse the matter for the thing which comes to us through the matter. And that's Barfield's understanding of idolatry. It's to collapse what is it's sort of irreducibly composite reality, form in matter, and the relationship between the two, this Trinitarian truth about how reality is constructed and what it looks like, to collapse that into just a pure identification of, well, this matter has this, is the good, is the God, is the thing that I should worship and pray to. If I do this physical gesture, then the rain will come, or what have you. It's not just primitive, it's actually primordial. It lives, it's something that we constantly do because we are the kinds of creatures that we are, because we experience the truth, because we experience high things that are beyond, that are metaphysical in the physical, fleshly here and now. Constantly have to be avoiding confusing the flesh with the thing that comes to us through the flesh. And that's in some ways what the whole practice of Jewish religion taught in antiquity, was to disambiguate those two things.